All right, ladies and gentlemen, this one is going to be fun. So, unless you've been living under a rock, then you won't know who our guest is. It's the one and only Rachel Doerrie. Rachel, how's it going tonight?
It's going well, boys. How are you guys doing?
Fired up, there's a Leaf game going on in the background, but we'll get to that later on tonight, I'm
Doing
sure.
well, doing well, Rachel. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, I'm fired up. I mean, yeah, like you said, there's a Leaf game going on, so I'm sure at least one of us is going to be getting routine updates about what's going on.
I
I'm
think
Absolutely.
two of us have a screen beside us with the game going right now, so there'll be updates.
I
throughout.
gotta ask James, who's on the back of that jersey?
This one,
Yeah.
this is the St. John Maple Leafs one. It's the
Okay.
throwback for the Growlers, but it's Alexander.
Okay, because I was like, if that's a 20 jersey, that might be a Mike Johnson, in which case I might need to be purchasing that. But
No, he has not made my collection yet.
honestly, though, like if anybody actually finds a legit Mike Johnson jersey at me on Twitter, I will pay more than you would think for it.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, I
Find
love
her a
it.
Mike Johnson jersey. Yeah, no, this one here was in the summertime. Picked it up at a yard sale for $10.
Unreal. I actually
And it's
love that jersey.
beautiful. It's crisp. It
And
hasn't been worn.
the one that Pete's got, the Morgan Riley one, the Bieber, I think it's the Bieber one, right?
Yeah,
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 yeah.
the Bieber one is so sick. And I haven't been able to say that because like job. But
true enough. True enough.
it's sick and I would absolutely own one. I maybe
The,
should if they're
the
for
only
sale.
problem with owning it is like I don't want to wear it because I'm afraid I'm gonna get like if I go to the game and get beer on me or someone spills ketchup or I'm just like I don't want to ruin it. It's such a nice jersey.
That's kind of the perfect one to do it though, because it's a darker color. So if something does spill on it, it's not going to show up
I
as
guess. I
much.
don't know. It's so new and fresh. I just don't want to touch it. I'm just gonna
Man,
let it
I feel that because like when I was a kid, I had a Sundin jersey, and like it was autographed by a bunch of like really well-known Leafs, like 3 retired number guys. And I let my
Oh,
brother wear it to a game, and he got chocolate milk on the only white part of the
No.
jersey. And so I had to scrub it out, which means I also had to scrub the Sundin autograph out.
oh.
But
Yeah.
I actually, a couple years later, I worked for MLSE, and I actually went up to one of the people that worked for the Leafs, and I was like, hey, like, this is the situation. Do you think we could rectify this? And then, like, a month later, he was like, hey, like, secretly, like, Matt's is going to be in town. Like, bring your jersey in. I'll make sure it gets done. And Matt's actually re-signed the jersey.
I love that.
That's an
Oh,
awesome
love
story,
Matt.
though. But you
Yeah,
still have
Matt's
to
is the
hold that
GOAT.
grudge against your brother
Yeah.
for a little bit, though.
Oh, do you think my brother has worn any of my jerseys since?
Probably not.
Not a
I'd like to
shot.
hope not,
0%.
anyways.
No, 0% chance. Nobody actually has. I don't let people wear like any of my stuff, and it sucks because like from a Toronto FC perspective, like if you follow soccer at all,
This guy right here.
exact. So like I dated,
I don't.
well, I'm
Oh, is that
dating
Jake? That's
actually.
Jimmy. Okay.
I'm dating somebody that's like decently high up at the club, and so like just like the stuff that comes in, and I can never wear any of it because he always gets it signed. So I'm like, could you maybe get me something that like I could just wear?
Yeah, just have for my own little private collection.
Yeah, like I just want to wear it to a match. I don't want to hang it in my room or anything like that. Like at some point, you got to have stuff that you can wear, right?
That's true.
Absolutely.
That's true. Yeah, no, I agree with you fully. My shadow box in front of me here, much like your story, signed by Sittler, Vive, Gilmore, Clark, all the different names. Lou Lamorello signed it, Brendan Shanahan.
Whoa,
So
whoa,
they
whoa!
came
Time out,
here.
time out. You got a Lou Lamorello autograph?
I did, and I've shown the picture every time. I'll send you a shot of it. But yeah, he signed it, and the picture is he's actually very short, to be honest.
He is.
And I
He's
had to
my height.
I had to crouch down for him to sign the back of my jersey, but we went out a door that we shouldn't have went out when they were in town, and he ended up being there. He took 30 minutes to talk to us about everything under the sun, signed my jersey, no problem. But it's a great signature too. You could
Lou
definitely sell
Lamorello
it.
gets like this rap that is like it's well earned. But like I happened to like be doing stuff for the Leafs when he was the GM, and I remember the first time I met him, and it was the scariest thing of my life, like in terms of meeting someone. I mean, I was just like standing there. I'm in my tracksuit because I'm getting ready to go on the ice at development camp, and I just get like a tap on the shoulder, like from behind. It was like one of these like I was like, oh, what? So I like just kind of turn around like this, and he's in a full suit in the middle of July, and it's just, good morning. I am Lou Lamorello. And in my mind, I'm like, I know, like, I know who you are.
Yeah, well versed in who you
Oh,
are.
he's so intimidating.
Oh my god, it was the scariest thing. And then I told this story on my podcast, but this was when the Leafs drafted Nikolai Chabikin, the Russian guy.
Yep.
And he came with the Jaromir Jagr like black tux. And we had a bet, like, how long is this gonna last? Because like Lou, right? You can't have facial
Yes.
hair or like a
Right.
haircut. Like, you're not
Right.
having this,
Yeah.
right? So we're like, how long is this gonna last? 5 minutes into the first thing, he's standing in that window at the Ford Performance Center, and all of a sudden he just like points down and does this. Next practice, guess whose tux were no longer black?
Insane. I
Wow.
love it. Oh
That's
man, do you have any other loose stories? Like this guy he's
a
outrageous.
legend.
I love hearing this stuff.
Honestly, I think he gets his rap for being like this huge, like, I don't know if you can swear, but like hard ass.
No, hard ass ain't bad.
So like he gets this rap, but honestly, like my interactions with him, he is really kind.
Mhm.
Like, obviously I worked in New Jersey and he is a legend there, and
Yeah,
rightfully
of course.
so. And honestly, like, people didn't like the rules, but what every single person who worked for the organization said while he was president and like while I was there was that, like, you knew that if something really was like going sideways or like something happened, like Lou was the first person to have your back. And like one of the guys who's just like an IT guy, he was like a coordinator, I guess, at the time. And like his father suddenly passed away. And Lou Lamorello found out somehow and showed up at the funeral.
Oh, that's
Wow.
awesome.
That's amazing.
it's
That's
just
a
like-
character.
Man, it's when you have somebody like that at the top of your organization, like, yes, he's got all these like weird kind of nuts rules, but when you have somebody that does that or is like sending flowers, or I mean, like he did something for me that like I'm not going to publicize, but like it's cemented for me that like he is a genuinely good human being. And so you're just motivated. Like at that point, you're leading by example. You talk about like character at the top of an organization. You might disagree with like the facial hair or the long hair thing, but he's showing up to some random IT guy's dad's funeral because he believes that the organization needs to support its employees. Like, that sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, and I think a little bit of that, just to dovetail it to the Leafs a little bit, rubbed off on Kyle Dubas. You look how he took care of Ilya Mikheyev, staying behind in New Jersey when he slit his wrist. All those little things go into it, and those are just Lewisms, right? You learn those as they're passed down. But yeah, I agree with you. He gave us 30 minutes of time. Didn't have to. We weren't supposed to be there. Just talked about every single thing that we wanted to ask him about. And I'll give you the flip side of that. Shanny did sign my jersey, but before he did, he yelled at me.
There you go. Exactly. And like, honestly, like Shanny's pretty nice guy when you work for him too. But I think like with Lou, Shanny doesn't really have a bad rap, right? Because he doesn't talk ever, which like might serve some people to maybe take that advice. But like with Lou, he also like he talks but doesn't really say a whole lot. But behind the scenes, if you've ever worked for him, there's a reason a lot of his employees are super loyal. And like there are more than a few that jumped from New Jersey to the Islanders when he ended up ultimately at the Islanders because of what it's like to work for Lou. Like it's, you can agree or disagree with how he like runs a hockey club or the salary cap or like whatever, but I have a pretty hard time finding anybody like, you know how like people are like, oh, I wonder like if somebody writes a book about Lou, there's going to be like skeletons, or with all of this like hockey culture stuff that's being rightfully like exposed. I am legitimately not even remotely worried about anything about Lou being exposed because like I just don't think anything's
There's nothing out there on him.
Yeah, I just don't think anything's there.
No, he's again, he has the rules. He's pretty black and white in what he does. Everybody understands what he is and what he stands for. So there's really no roundabout way. If he wants something done, like you said, from the Ford Performance Center, he just motions and gets it done. It's over with. You listen to what he says, get it over with, and go. But yeah, I don't think there's any skeletons in that man's closet.
No, I don't think so either. And I think that you're right. It did rub off on Kyle. And I think it's very underrated. Like just people say like, oh, this person's a bad GM or this person's a good GM or XYZ. Like, I think it's super underrated to just be a good person. Like,
It's so weird that bare minimum statement, just be a good person, has to be such a high bar lately. That's the crazy thing.
yeah, it's like like this guy, would you rather have a GM that like maybe isn't the best at certain things, but is not gonna allow anything nefarious to go on in their organization? Or would you rather like some lizard be your GM or your head of your organization, and like sure, like you might have some playoff success, but like then all of these skeletons come out.
And then it becomes a bigger problem. Then it hinders the team, and then things fall apart, and then players don't want to go there.
Yeah, like
it seems like a very easy toxic trail to lead. Doing that kind of stuff.
A perfect circle of crap.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the perfect circle of crap that Bruce Boudreau had to go through. Someone who's kind of near and dear to you. We saw your TikTok. Obviously, we know the connection as well. But it was sad. It was just flat out sad to watch a guy with that much passion and the energy he brings. He's bouncing. He's always smiling. He's always cordial, has stories. He's one of those guys. He's like everybody's grandpa, so to speak.
That's exactly how I would describe him.
You just want to be around him. And then when you see him upset, you want to run through a brick wall for him because it's like, that's not fair. But to watch how he was drug along and how he was just left in the wind, and then to have Rutherford, who could have silenced a lot of it and just kept his yap shut, like he said at his presser, which if you realize that now, you should have realized that for a year. Like, why would you do that to the poor guy? I want to know, just spill a little bit of your thoughts on this, a little bit of how you feel about Boudreau.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was terrible. And regardless of what my relationship with Bruce is, I don't condone that kind of treatment or behavior to anybody, whether I dislike them or not. Everybody deserves a baseline level of respect and dignity, and especially when it's Bruce, who's someone who's universally just like beloved in the game.
Yeah.
Like to me, obviously, given my battle against the Canucks right now, I don't think very highly of some people in that organization. And yet, if they were treated this way, I would still have a problem with it because you don't do that. But then it's Bruce. And I don't know if you saw my letter kind of in the hockey news. But I kind of detailed like Bruce taught me a lot of lessons, and probably the biggest one that he taught me was even when it sucks and when it's inconvenient and it goes against the grain, you have to stand up for what's right.
Yep.
You just have to. And I got to be honest with you, like had I survived that situation at the beginning of the season and had been with the organization, I probably would have resigned over this because I don't work for people who treat other people like this. That is just not how I was brought up. That's not ethically how I believe an organization should be run. And for me, I'm a big believer in that. And I understand like, yeah, business is business, but man, I've worked for a major Canadian bank. Like I've worked for other professional teams, and this is not how things work. I mean, we just talked about Lou Lamoriello. There's no way that would have happened. And so for me, it's unacceptable. And then to come out and say, like, I decided this morning to make a coaching change. Do you mean to tell me that Rick Tocchet was in Vancouver, in a city or country he doesn't live in, with a contract and a work visa, and happened to be at your press conference and happened to speak to the Sedins a few days before? Like, what are you talking about?
Even still, look at the broadcast for TNT. They were all joking about it and having fun with it, right? So it was already
trash.
Oh, I know.
That was so bad. And yeah, so to me, Bruce is one of those people, like, you know how they talk about, oh, like a guy is gruff in the media? Like John Tortorella is actually a great example. John Tortorella is really short and gruff in the media. Like he puts on this persona of like, just like angry all the time.
Yep.
But like, I know people who have worked with Torts and like for Torts, and they all say he's like a super caring guy, like another guy that like has shown up to people's dad's funerals. Like that's just that kind of thing. And obviously I disagree with how he handled the Ivan Provorov situation, but it goes to show that you could be different with the media than you are behind the scenes. Whereas like with Bruce, not only is what you see is what you get, but if you can imagine, like, he's nicer behind the scenes. Like, he's even better behind the
That's
scenes.
amazing.
And like when
Amazing.
I was going through what I was going through, and like I was left twisting in the wind just like he was. Obviously, it wasn't as public,
Yeah.
which is just awful to begin with. But to be left twisting in the wind, like, he had my back, and he knew that they didn't like him already. So like it was dangerous for him to have my back, and he didn't care. He was like, "No, this is not the way you do things, and this is not what I believe in." And so, am I surprised that he was treated the way he was? Unfortunately, no, because I was treated the exact same way. Um, and so to me, like, I know Bruce will land on his feet. He owns a hockey team in Hershey. I really think that the Leafs need to consider bringing him on in some type of role, whether it's like a consultant or, I mean, hell, like he has openly said he would take an assistant coaching job in Toronto. I think next year, if Sheldon Keefe remains the head coach of the Leafs, I think serious consideration needs to be given to Bruce. There aren't many teams that score more goals than Bruce Boudreau teams. And what is Toronto's main issue in the playoffs?
Putting the puck in the net.
Right.
Yeah, it's not defense, guys. Like,
No.
No.
And we're gonna get to that because that's a thing that is now percolating as well, and interesting comments coming out of Barry Trotz as well about the Leafs D. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But for you, obviously, that situation not ideal, and the hockey world for you right now, like you said to me, you're just getting back into things.
yeah.
For you, where is the ideal spot for you? Do you want to work again for an NHL team eventually, or are you more happy doing the media side of things, or where is Rachel Doerrie on that side?
TikToks are great, by the way. Everyone, if you're not following Rachel on TikTok, give her a follow because she's fantastic at that.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, like, it's really hard, honestly, guys. Like, it's toxic. And I would say that for me, it's not about working for a team anymore. It's working for somebody that I want to work for in an environment that isn't going to cause me to have cardiac events or
That
make
makes
me
perfect sense.
suicidal. Like, I just don't want to deal with that. And I don't think anybody should. Like, I'm not even talking about hockey. Like, if you're at a job that makes you feel that way, you need to find a different job.
Absolutely.
Like, please. There's no job that's worth that. And so be very judicious and careful. Right now, hockey is not really a spot that I want to be. And if I want to be in it, it's going to be on my own terms. So like, I have my TikTok, I have my podcast, I can write what I want, but it's on my terms. I don't have anybody telling me you need to do this or you need to do that or whatever the case may be. Like, the owner of the Hockey News is basically like, whatever you want to do, like, just do it. And so awesome. It's kind of, like, Graham's awesome. And it's one of those things where right now, like, I'm still really reeling from what I've been through. It has been almost 5 months and I'm still not medically cleared for like full normalcy. That is the rigors that I have gone through. And so that can really change how you view things.
Yep.
And so I would say this, there are a handful of people that I am willing to work for right now. And unless one of those people has an opportunity, I'm probably going to just continue to do things on my terms right now, because I am more than happy to work at the bank where I get treated really well and it's a 9 to 5 and they focus on professional development. And it probably won't shock you to hear that there aren't just flagrant HR violations here, there, and everywhere, like there are in hockey. And that's not even specific to me. Like, that people in hockey talk, and like there's other stuff that just hasn't come out, and maybe it will and maybe it won't, but like right now hockey's in a tough spot. And so for me, if I'm not working for somebody where I know that it's going to be a positive environment, it's hard for me to justify potentially sacrificing my mental and cardiac health just to say that I work in hockey, when the reality is I can make so much more money not working in hockey and work far less hours and not have people accosting me on the street.
That's
Like,
crazy.
you don't understand that it's far less stressful to just not work in hockey. Like,
Damn, you're shattering a lot of dreams right now, Rachel. But this is great
But
to
it's
hear.
true though. Like what
Yeah,
she's
no,
saying is
I'm
true,
like,
right? You got to take your
yeah,
mental and physical well-being over anything
absolutely.
else before you step into. And that was one of the things I was going to ask. A lot of people think it's this glorious thing, having the keys to be able to work for an NHL team
Yeah,
and be within the organization. But there's a lot of things that we don't know and you don't get to see unless someone peels back the curtain. And like you said, there may be a lot of stories that open a floodgate where things start to come out. And maybe it's time for hockey to have a hard reset and get figured out. And, like Brendan Shanahan said about the Leafs, maybe the NHL needs a scorched earth. But that's something it won't happen given who owns teams and who's involved with the league. It won't get there.
no, I have a hard time believing that it will. I think it's going to be an organization by organization type of thing. Do I think the NHL is making some positive strides? Yes, absolutely. But at the end of the day, like, look at where baseball is, look at where the NBA is, look at where even the NFL is. Oh my God. Like, I'm not talking from a player criminal perspective because that's obviously
Yes.
not fantastic, but like
No.
diversity in front offices, like the NFL has a straight up hiring policy.
Yep.
They like do. The NHL, this is how it works. You have friends, they know people high up in front offices, and then they call you. That is how that works. I'm not even kidding. Or it's somebody's son. That's how that works. It's
the same picking pool all the time.
Exactly. And like, I don't know. I think a lot of people think that just because you work in sports, like the comments on my TikTok being like, "Oh, he gets paid like $2 million," like you could suck it up. There is no excuse for that kind of behavior, like at all. And I think we can all agree that like most billionaires are the worst people on earth, like with the exception of like Mark Cuban and maybe Warren Buffett. But like, do any of us sitting here think Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos is a good person?
No.
No, exactly, right? So it's like, come on. Like, you have to understand that like a lot of these people aren't great people. And in hockey, like, yeah, you get to work in hockey or you get to work in professional sport. Do either of you get called at, unless you're a firefighter, police officer, like that kind of thing, do any of you get called at 2:00 in the morning asking you to do a random task for work?
I used to,
No.
because I worked for
That's crazy.
a medical gas company. So
Okay,
if
yeah,
somebody
but
ran out of
that's
the hospital. But
yeah.
but that was few and far between anyways. But when it did happen, yeah.
That is nuts, Rachel. So you would get texts, emails at 2 a.m. Complete
That's
this task. It's
Yeah.
insane. I have my phone on do not disturb. Like I'm a baby. I need my sleep. But man, that's insane to hear. Yeah, James, you know I love my sleep. But,
Oh, I'm a total
Sure.
princess with my sleep. Like, well, and mine is kind of health related too. Like my heart starts acting all weird if I don't get like a certain like amount of like REM. But yeah, like I got
I'm envious of both of you, by the way.
this is
3
why
to 4 hours is what I get max.
if I'm up at 2 a.m. and I'm doing a task, there's not a shot I'm going to bed after. Like I have work is on my mind. You can't fall asleep after that. Your sleep cycle is ruined after that, and then your day is ruined after that.
To be clear, Bruce never called me at 2:00 in the morning.
Oh yeah, of course not.
Okay.
I wouldn't
Bruce
assume
did
with
not
it.
call me at 2:00 in the morning. But yeah, like I've had it where like somebody has sent me something at all hours of the night being like, we need this for like 6 a.m. Because 6 a.m. on at one point is 9 a.m. on the East Coast. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
okay. Like in one specific instance, and I was like, listen, on trade deadline, if you want me at that hour, like fine, I understand that.
Yep.
But on a random day in July, like maybe not.
Yeah, let's just close the phone for a little bit, put it aside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where like Pete, you said you have your phone on Do Not Disturb. I now have my phone on Do Not Disturb from 11 o'clock at night to 9 o'clock in the morning. But when you work in the NHL, like you're not allowed to do that. And my boyfriend works in professional soccer and he's not allowed to do that either.
Insane.
And it's crazy. There's just no, like, you make less. To give you an idea, like let's say I make, for example, $100,000 at a non-sports job, right? And I work 40 hours a week, let's say, maybe even 45, call it.
Sure.
to do that same job in the National Hockey League, I'd make 70,000 and I'd be on call 24/7, 365, including Christmas.
That doesn't sound fun to me.
Like, does that sound like?
Does not sound
Doesn't
good,
sound inviting,
Rachel.
not at
Oh,
all.
my
Not even a little
God.
bit. No.
Yeah, does that sound like the toy box to you? Because
No, because you think of working for an NHL organization. I'm like, this is my dream. This is gonna be, it's gonna be amazing. And then just hearing all this now is completely turning my perspective, and it's very interesting to hear, Rachel. So
We wonder why the pictures of GMs and coaches, why they look so aged, come 2-3 years into it.
yeah.
There's a reason.
Like, there's a
an
reason
absolute
Sheldon
reason.
Keefe has a full head of gray hair, and the picture of Sheldon Keefe and I on my Instagram, he is fully brown haired.
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah,
Like-
there's a reason.
That was 5 years ago. And he's got a full head of gray hair right now.
Silver
like,
fox now.
Even me, like, when I worked in New Jersey and when I worked in Vancouver, like, both times I came back and immediately went to the doctor and got scolded by the doctor because I had lost too much weight. And, like, the people who know me kind of know, like, I don't have a ton of weight to lose. Right? And so it's one of those things where, like, the doctor was like, you can't lose 10% of your body weight. Like, don't do that.
Yeah, that's a no-no.
Exactly. And so it's one of those things where it's like you're working in an environment that's so stressful. And I wasn't even the only one. Like, I don't know of a ton of, put it this way, like, younger people that haven't been in the game that don't have, like, drinking problems or, like, some level of issue, because it's just, that's how it is. And then you look at, like, mental health and it's like just looked so far down upon. So what do people do? They drink.
They burn
And so-
themselves even further. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just consistently in this cycle, and it's not healthy. So I think hockey as a whole, would I like to work in it? Yes, absolutely. But it needs to get a whole lot healthier. And I think the Carolina Hurricanes, from what I can glean, have done a really good job of fostering a really good work environment. I think Eric Tulsky probably has a fair bit to do with that. I've also heard really good things about Don Waddell.
And Rob Brindamore as well, sticking up for his staff.
Yeah, Rod Brindamore. I have a lot of time for Rod Brindamore. And so that seems like an organization where, like, things are relatively normal. But yeah, like, I would say, like, even in Vancouver, my Aiden Fox was who I had originally, like, worked with.
Yep.
And, like, he gets it. Like, that guy gets it. And I would work with him, for him again, 100%. He just he understands, like, how it works on a human level, and I think that kind of gets lost a lot.
Those things need to be amplified, though, and that's the problem. Those voices and those people aren't amplified. And like
No,
you said,
they're
it's
not.
the same picking pool, and it just goes around and around and around. And then when one guy kind of ages out, it's another guy who's been handpicked by one of those guys to jump in this spot and join the circle.
Yeah.
Basically what it is. And anybody can disagree with that, but I would call you a liar.
There are some really good people in hockey, and not many of them are at the top of the food chain.
No, or they get looked down upon because the way they handle things or do things is not the way that it's quote unquote supposed to be done. Heaven
forbid you're kind and compassionate. That's absolutely not allowed.
Don't put those words out there. Come on now. People will push you right down.
What I will say, though, is, like, I know a few people that have worked for Kyle Dubas and Sheldon Keefe, and a lot of people say that both of them are, like, they fall in the category of kind and compassionate.
I love hearing that. Rachel, to, I guess, move it over to the Leafs. We're a Leafs podcast. What is your initial reaction of this team this year? Do you think it's different? We all tell ourselves that every year, but is it different?
I'm with Barry Trotz. First of all, who are any of us to be arguing with Barry Trotz?
That's exactly what I said with my videos. I was like, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Not going to be me. But I kind of tend to agree with him. Like, listen, I personally, and I said this long before any of the Atlantic Division stuff was happening, the playoff format is trash.
Oh my God.
We're going to have 2 of the top 5 teams out of the playoffs at the end of the second round. Like, you don't, as a league, you should not want that. As a league, you should want your best teams getting through. And you, like, NBA doesn't do it. I don't, like, this is stupid.
It
It doesn't
create
fit.
rivalries, Rachel. Rivalries.
Yeah, well, I got some news. The Toronto-Boston rivalry is going to be a rivalry regardless of whether they play in the playoffs or
It's very
not.
true.
Yeah, look at Winnipeg and Toronto as well. There's a rivalry brewed there because it naturally happened.
Everybody in Vancouver hates Toronto. Like, my boyfriend literally works for Toronto FC, and I was told when I moved to Vancouver that I wasn't allowed to cheer for Toronto FC because it was a Toronto team. And I was like, okay, well,
Wow.
F you. Like, I'm going to support my significant other.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah,
That's how deep the hatred is. So, spare me this nonsense. Because the other thing is manufactured rivalries. Like, the Devils and the Islanders and the Rangers are going to hate each other regardless of whether they play in the playoffs or not.
Yeah, they're geographically
Pittsburgh and Philadelphia are going to hate each other no matter what.
Yep.
Carolina is Carolina. Nobody has a rivalry with them because they're just Carolina. Exactly. So, like, to me, this manufactured nonsense, no. I want to see the best quality hockey and the best quality players. So, for me, with the Leafs, I think they're going to be hard-pressed to get out of the first round because Andrei Vasilevsky is Andrei Vasilevsky.
He's pretty good.
Exactly. But having said that, I am one of those people that believes just because they don't get out of the first round doesn't mean you need to blow it up. I actually think that that's totally counterintuitive. And really, really stupid. Like, imagine if Colorado blew it up and just decided, you know what, actually, we're going to trade Nathan McKinnon. Like, that would be bad. That would be bad. Or think about all of the times that Ovechkin got knocked out. Imagine if the Caps were like, you know what, we actually don't need Nick Backstrom or John Carlson. Think about that. Would they have won the cup without either of those guys? Not a chance.
Not a chance.
So to me, I look at it, and are some of those contracts, not say this until I am blue in the face, William Nylander is not a tradable asset.
Thank you, Rachel.
Unless you are getting Cale Makar, which you're not.
No.
Or Charlie McAvoy, which, again, you're not. You can't trade. He has the most valuable contract on that team.
Well, I also have a big philosophy when it comes to moving something out of your organization. If you're moving a player out of your organization, who in your organization is stepping into his shoes to fill that void? Or what are you bringing in that offsets the production at his value that it's going to do it? You're not going to do it. You're going to sign somebody for a higher value and may not get the same offensive output. So why would you move William Nylander?
Let me ask you this question, guys. I'm curious to see kind of what you guys have to say, because you guys pay close attention to your Leaf fans. Would you trade and extend Timo Meier for, let's say, $7.5 million if it meant that the consequences were that you A, lose Alex Kerfoot, and B, you don't re-sign Michael Bunting? Would you prefer at Michael Bunting at like probably 4.5 or 5, and then like an Alex Kerfoot type, or would you want Timo Meier?
I think I'd rather keep Bunting, to be honest. I like Bunting. I don't know. I'm not a Kerfoot fan, but no,
I just meant like that money would be allocated to like 2 players, including Bunting, versus like Timo Meier at like 7.
Yeah, right. I'd take the Bunting and Kerfoot over Timo Meier.
I would go Timo Meier. And the reason why is you have players, I just said it, within your organization that can fill the spot for Kerfoot on your bottom 2 lines. Or you can go get a guy like I think it's Lafferty over in Chicago, who's a low cap hit. Or the same thing with Bobby McMahon, or all these guys are cycling through right now, Matthew Nyes, et cetera, to put into your top 6. But then you also still have Timo Meier, and they're rolling with the guys that you already have. Now, had you have said you can add Timo Meier, but in a year's time after that, you're going to lose William Nylander,
no.
I would have said fast stayed with the guys that you're keeping that are there now. But Bunting, I love Bunting, but his contract is probably going to be, again, just like Hyman, a little too rich for being up there with those big 4. So if you can get Meier, sign him for that 1 year, the $10 million qualifying offer, then 7.5, 8 him. I mean, that's a premier player, and your top 6 looks pretty juicy.
Yeah, so like I think it really depends on what Michael Bunting's contract is. And I do believe, because like everything I've heard and everything I know, is that guy is actually not interested in the money at all. He literally just wants to be a Leaf. And so that's
a flip right there. That's amazing to hear.
If you could sign Michael Bunting to Alex Kerfoot's contract, you just take that
The
to
value
the
in that.
bank, right? I'm totally fine with Michael Bunting at $3.5 million. To me, that is worth it in spades. But once you get into 4.5, 5, like that is where it gets really, really dicey because you have Marner at almost 11, because you have Matthews at 11, because you have Tavares at 11. Like, you can't allocate that much to the top of your lineup. And so for me, I think you need to have a bunch of these guys that, like, let's call a spade here. Timo Meier is a better hockey player than Michael Bunting is.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yep.
So you can't overpay. Like, if you're going to overpay, it needs to be for Meier, not for Bunting, is my opinion.
No, I'm in the same boat as that. And like I said, you do have guys within the organization who can step in and fill those top line voids, or even the bottom six where Kerfoot goes. For Bunting, I'd be comfortable at 3.75 as well. You know, a little bit of a raise over what Kerfoot makes. But who really knows? If he's not about the money, then hopefully the Leafs throw a long-term deal at him just to lock him up and keep him here. But one thing that Kyle Dubas, even if he's not going to be the table setter beyond this year, has done with the Leafs cap is he's left a lot of blank check space for William Nylander and Austin Matthews coming into the next couple of years. There's not a lot of huge ticket deals outside of Morgan Riley, Calle Yarncroke, and I believe Matt Murray has 1 year left. But other than that, and Marner, of course, but I'm just talking about like small, frivolous kind of deals that are 3.5, 5.
I mean, like the Mark Giordano deal is a steal. Like that is a federal offense to be paying him that much money. Like,
but listen, hopefully Bunting sees that and says, you know what, I'll take $1.8 million. Let's go. You know,
honestly, like with Michael Bunting, and I think a lot of people don't realize this. Like, it gets talked about sometimes, but like people don't realize how much money Wendell Clark and like Daryl Sittler and those guys make because they were Leafs for that long. Like, you are whole ass set for life if you do stuff here. So like if Austin Matthews takes like probably like 13 on his next contract, maybe 14, like he's still going to get $4 million a year in endorsements. If Michael Bunting takes $3.5 million and then is obviously beloved because he clearly took a pay cut, the endorsement deals that you could have for a Scarborough boy playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs who took less money are just this with all of it, right? And because he's going to live in Toronto after his career anyways, like he's just going to be able to make money for decades. And if you're part of a team, and I think a lot of people like just don't even realize this, like Sittler and Clark and Gilmore, like none of them won cups. If you actually have any level of playoff success here, you will literally never pay for anything in this city ever again.
It's very, very true.
Very true.
When Sebastian Javinko goes to the coffee shops in Yorkville, do you think he pays for anything?
No.
When Josie Altidore is here, do you think he pays for a single thing? Not a single thing.
No.
Do they pay for it? So now think about that if you're the Leafs.
Yeah.
Like Kyle Lowry is probably never paying for a meal in this city ever again.
Oh no, there's people lining up to get him to go wherever it is.
Exactly.
It's the opposite effect.
Imagine if you have, even if you get to the cup final or like the third round, Marner, Matthews, Tavares, like any of those guys, like pretty much anybody on that team.
Set for life.
You're set. And so I look at that and I say, I mean, the guaranteed income of endorsements, like, is absolutely a thing. I don't blame Zach Hyman for taking the money. That's turned out to be great in the first couple years. Am I skeptical of the end of that contract? Yes.
Same with you. 2 knee injuries.
Bunting hasn't had those injuries, so I'm far less skeptical of a contract for him. Great point. Kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah,
but I
do
think the Leafs, like for me, I would. First of all, if you can get a star player, I don't think Matthew Nye should be off the table.
I have a theory. I don't think those items are off the table. I think it's just reverse bargaining by Kyle Dubas by saying, no, these things are not available. Making teams be like, well, no, we want Matthew Nyes. We want that first round pick. So what do we have to do to be able to get Meier onto your team? You know, what else can we do? Right. It's just that reverse thing, like saying, no, we're not going to do it.
And with Meyer, like, you're gonna have to send salary back too. So like, okay, you could do either Kerfoot or Engvall, going back, and like Matthew Nyes. Like, to me, that's fine. There are at least 2 players I would trade Matthew Nyes for.
So what
At
are those
least
2
2
players?
at this deadline: Timo Meyer and Bo Horvat.
Bo Horvat.
I think first of all, Bo Horvat's not going to score 60 or 55 goals ever again in his career.
No.
However, and I have worked with him, so I know this firsthand. That is a guy where, like, pressure is just not a thing. Like, I don't know how he does it, but like, look at what's happening in Vancouver right now, and he's having the best season of his career. Like, he just has this ability to just like block it out. And for me, like, if you can get Bo Horvat and like he helps you kind of get over that hump, because I absolutely like Julian Brisebois is on the record being like, look at our cap situation. I can't go get an impact player. So like, he's getting what, Luke Shen? So if the Leafs counter the Tampa Bay Lightning getting Luke Shen by getting Bo Horvat, like, you've won that situation. You absolutely have.
Yeah. No, then again, they're just making it very exciting for Leaf fans on this side of things. I do think that the Maple Leafs, and we'll curtail to the D for a moment, I do think they are going to make a deal for a defenseman. I have my tinfoil hat theory that I do think Jake Muzzin plays in the playoffs. I think he does come back. That is, listen, you can dampen my hopes right here, but with the team, like, this is just the things I see from an outsider's perspective. I see him with the team. I see him working out. He's always with them. You know, my hope is that he gets the Shea Weber, Carey Price, one last hurrah. You know, you can play, but you'll be, you know, limited minutes. And then if anything even slightly goes wrong, he's immediately out. But I would love to see Muzzin get one more run, because I think after this season, it's done.
Yeah, like, I think he's perma LTIR.
I love Muzzy.
I mean, he's a playoff guy, right? But I think a guy like Scott Mayfield is a guy that I don't think you're going to have to give up a ton of assets for.
No.
He's also only $1.5 million on the cap, which is almost nothing, considering what his value is. He's right-handed, and I think this absolute nonsense of like, no, the Leafs have Justin Holl. Since when? Like, yes, he's been good this year. Yeah. Does anybody want to find out in the playoffs that maybe he can't handle that? Does anybody want to take that risk? Or do you want to have some level of fail-safe there? Like, to me, I look at Scott Mayfield, and I say, if you're 6 going into the playoffs are Morgan Rielly, TJ Brody, Rasmus Sandin, Timothy Liljegren, Mark Giordano, and Scott Mayfield, and then you have Justin Holl, let's say if Liljegren takes a step back, or like someone is going to get hurt, right? Then you have that, like, you're good. But Toronto also has like 97 million defensemen.
Yeah, that you really don't hear about. Like, how about Victor Mete? Jordy Ben is playing tonight.
You're gonna have to include some of these guys in a deal, right? And like, okay, if you want a more longer term situation, okay, Jake McCabe. But that's a lot of salary.
That was my argument, because producer Clark obviously is a guy that we work a lot with too, and he comments a lot on your videos and stuff.
Love Clark.
Great guy. Obviously love Clarky. Always on this show too, usually on Wednesday nights. Funny he's not here today. But he was talking to me today about McCabe, and that was my argument, that salary is hard, and you'd have to give up more assets if you want Chicago to retain, and you had to retain for 2 years. So then what are you flipping in that deal that doesn't allow you to make another deal for a forward? Because obviously you're going to have to give them a little more, pay the piper. So I like the Mayfield deal a lot more.
Yeah, and I got to be honest with you, if there's a deal to be made with Chicago, I really think it's probably Patrick Kane. I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying I think that's what it is.
Go, whoop.
Pete was like, pardon?
I don't know. I don't know about that one, but
I think that is, first of all, I have it on pretty good authority that he would waive for Toronto, which is like wild. But then that person also was like, he wants to play with Matthews, and I was like, well, yes, that checks out. Fine, fair enough. They play together in the summer, so that doesn't surprise me at all. But at the same time, I'm like,
The
the
numbers.
assets involved in trading for Patrick Kane,
It's going to be a lot.
right?
Yeah, you definitely would be sending Matthew Nyes this time to Chicago.
Matthew Nyes would be included in that deal. Make no mistake
I
about
think that
that.
goes without saying.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, do I like? Is Jonathan Taves an option? I actually think Jonathan Taves probably ends up in Winnipeg.
Yeah, that very much so.
I think they need some center depth to compensate for like Mark Scheifele in the playoffs. Like I think Winnipeg would be I would be a lot more scared of Winnipeg if Scheifele was on the wing. He is an absolute defensive liability. So if you have like Pierre-Luc Dubois, who is also not fantastic defensively, my God. And then you have Jonathan Taves, and then you have Adam Lowry. Okay, you have two legit like two-way centers at that point.
Yeah.
And then you have one guy who can just say, okay, like now you're playing offense, but now you're not asking like other guys to penalty kill, right? Jonathan Taves can penalty kill. Do I think he'd be a fit with the Leafs? Yes. Would I prefer him over Alex Kerfoot? Absolutely.
Just that small little thing of the contract size.
That contract situation is an issue. Somebody suggested to me, and this is like, you know how like you can have fantasy hockey deals?
Yep.
Okay, somebody suggested this to me, and I almost fell off my chair, and they were like, this is how the salary works. And I was like, oh my God, it works. What if you traded Mitch Marner for Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane at each half retained? And I was like, absolutely not. Like,
I wouldn't give up Mitchie for almost anything in the league. He's just
like,
a stick that stirs a drink, and he's younger than both of those guys who probably wouldn't be sticking around very long in Toronto.
Now, if you said, would you trade Mitch Marner for Cale Makar? I'd be like, yes. Like, yes.
Bona fide number one defenseman that's going to put up multiple points every single season and lead you on the back end. Yeah, we're in. Sign off.
Yeah, like there's a few defensemen I would actually trade Mitch Marner for, but otherwise, like, I don't think I would. Like, I really don't. I would trade Mitch Marner for Cale Makar and Charlie McAvoy 100%. I think that guy is like
McAvoy's a beast.
Man, that guy should win the Norris like way more. Like he really just should.
I have him on my fantasy hockey team, so just I get to appreciate a little bit more just what he does on a nightly basis for the Bruins. It's just like watching his point total climb, but watching his ice time and everything just jumps right back in, casual, no problem.
My fear though is if the Leafs don't get out of the first round, that they're gonna overreact. Like obviously Dubas doesn't have a contract. I think Sheldon's is up this year too.
I believe so, yeah.
So I could totally.
I think Dubas walks no matter what the Leafs do. Even if they win the Stanley Cup, I think it's going to be a Barry Trotz kind of thing. I think he's going to walk.
Really? I don't see. That's the thing is like Kyle is never somebody that gives up, but I absolutely don't think the Leafs should walk away from him. What I do think the message needs to be is like, let's say they don't get out of the first round. If you look at who they have in their front office, you have Brandon Pridham, who you just like can't get rid of. The man helped, along with Steve Pellegrini, write the salary cap. So like those two are the best capologists in the league, and just thanks for coming. But then you got like Daryl Metcalf, who I think the world of. He is so smart. I think you need a little bit more of an old school GM. So if you retain Dubas, which I think they should, I think they need to bring somebody in who has an appreciation for the new school stuff, but also like gets the concept of the old school stuff. And like, I think of a guy like Mike Futa for that.
Yeah, that's a good name right there.
Yeah, like I'm a big fan of his. Like, first of all, in my like research, the LA Kings had one of the best drafting records in the period of time that I researched. And guess who was in charge of the Kings draft throughout that process?
Yeah.
That'd be him. And so I think he kind of deserves a look. Sheldon Keefe, I think, is a good coach. However, like if you can get Barry Trotz, I don't even think that that's a discussion. And that's the thing is, and this is the issue I had with Vancouver is like, if you are firing your coach, you have to be getting somebody better than him.
But it goes back to what you said though, about maybe people didn't want to come because of just what they're witnessing. It's like, maybe not.
Well, Barry Trotz has the same agent as Bruce Boudreau. So, I think we could just draw that line there.
Yeah, no, there's a whole lot of, I'm not going to do that. But here's the thing, too. We listened to what Barry Trotz said in that article. I thought, actually, he was speaking glowingly of Sheldon Keefe kind of heaping a little
Yeah.
praise that way, talking about the defensive structure, talking about the steps the team has made each year under its tutelage, which, a lot of people don't seem to want to see. They just want to see the fact the Leafs are out in round one, and that's it. Nothing else matters. But there has been incremental steps that this team has taken underneath his coaching style that has really helped this team.
I have a hot take.
Whoa.
Let's hear it.
It's really hot. Like,
Uh-oh. Get the oven mitts.
yeah, get maybe like an astronaut suit. Toronto is better defensively than they are offensively.
Whoa.
Hey, you know what? The stats do not lie. They definitely are. At least last
And I
time
think
checked,
Sheldon
top five in the
Keefe
league.
deserves the lion's share of that credit, because if you look at when Sheldon Keefe came in, the Leafs played like very, very much this like possession run and gun, like you're scoring all the time.
Yep.
Sheldon Keefe has actually shown he can adapt, because now with a lot of the same pieces, this is one of the best defensive teams in the league. And so for me, that speaks volumes about Sheldon Keefe as a coach. And you can say what you want about his playoff matchups and this, that. I'm not really interested in hearing it, because they have had trash goaltending every single year in the playoffs, except I believe last year. And last year they just couldn't score.
Yeah, they came down to the wire, and their bottom six was not as good as Tampa's bottom six, is what it was.
Exactly. And like against Montreal, like it just you got Carey priced. Just call it what it was. You got Carey priced.
You got Carey Price, and you got Denode. Denode really shut down Austin Matthews.
And that's the thing, is like offensively, like the defense has not been an issue in any of these series. And so I think that speaks volumes about Sheldon Keefe, because he showed that he can adapt. And I think maybe the pendulum has swung a little bit too much into the defensive side of things. But the focus for me should not be on Toronto's defensive play. My biggest fear with Toronto is that they're not going to be able to outscore what may be some softball goals in the playoffs. That's my fear.
And that has been why I've been beating the drum steadily that the Leafs need to get somebody offensive-minded at trade deadline to bring into this lineup, just as a little bit more of an infusion. Because then you can shift down Calle Yarncroke. You can shift down people to where they need to be. And if you add a Timo Meier, oh God, if you had a Timo Meier or a Bo Horvat, let's go.
If you're a lot more comfortable with Calle Yarncroke on your third line than you are on your second line. I'll just say that.
Well, but like, you don't know what you're going to get out of him any given night, because he hasn't been a consistent scorer throughout his career. So
yeah, and your top two lines are not for defense. You're supposed to score. So like, I think it's, first of all, when you just think you're going to insert Matthew Knies into the top six, you're basically saying, I'm going to bet on this magic bag of beans. Like, I don't know that I would be betting on a magic bag of beans if my job is on the line. I would rather trade that bag of magic beans for something that I know performs in the playoffs. And to me, it's not about just getting a guy that can score in the regular season. I need to know that I'm getting somebody who's performed in the playoffs. And they're not going to get the heebie-jeebies. So like the reason I brought up Patrick Kane, first of all, I think we can all establish he can play in the playoffs.
Yeah. He can get it done.
Get it done. He can also play in a massive media market with all types of scrutiny.
That's true. Very, very true.
And really, the only other guy that's proven he can do that is Bo Horvat.
The other guy that I might throw into that conversation, just as a get it done, but he's on the other side, I think, of his career now, especially this season, broken foot and all, is Ryan O'Reilly. He would be a guy that you could put into your top six that has done it in the playoffs, knows what it takes, is physical, wouldn't take a lick of crap off of anybody, and probably would put up some of those greasy, gritty type goals. But again, who would you rather? Bo Horvat or Timo Meier or Ryan O'Reilly?
I think the acquisition cost for Ryan O'Reilly is less. I mean, it should be. And Ryan O'Reilly, that's actually
Ryan O'Reilly and Mayfield as your two gets, opposed to getting one of Horvat or Meier.
Yes. And I'll tell you why. Ryan O'Reilly, first of all, face-offs, whether you like to think this or not, in certain situations in the playoffs, they do matter. Ryan O'Reilly is also...
He knows that I think they matter.
Yeah,
They
like
matter
they
in
don't matter
overtime.
they don't matter to the extent that people wax poetic about them,
I
but
think
they
for the
matter.
Leafs, the reason why I bring it up is because I said that the Leafs need to start David Kampf in overtime, and this is before they did it. I
No.
said just to get possession, and they did it. And now I will always stick with that.
They've done it a few times, James.
I know, and it works. It has worked. They've looked better in overtime.
But then you also like you look at it, if you get Ryan O'Reilly, then like maybe John Tavares doesn't have to play on the penalty kill. Because Ryan O'Reilly is like has been a perennial Selke guy for almost a decade. So like defensively, no qualms. Whereas like I have some questions about Timo Meier defensively. Like I do.
again, you're bringing him in for offense, though. That's what we were just saying, right? He's the guy
Exactly.
that can
But like,
fire
do
on
you
those
want
cylinders.
somebody where, and this is the thing I do like about Ryan O'Reilly, is if he plays second line, you can play him on the wing and then he just takes the draws, like
Yep.
whatever. Or if you want some depth, he's your third line center, and like that is matchup heaven at that point. If Ryan O'Reilly is playing against other teams' third and fourth lines, like that's a problem.
No, your bottom six is
In
eating
the
their
same
bottom
way
six.
that like it's gross that Boston just threw out Taylor Hall on the third line against Montreal last night. Like what?
What a
That
luxury, eh?
exactly. And so if you could have that luxury, if you could get Ryan O'Reilly and Scott Mayfield, I would do that as opposed to getting Bo Horvat or Timo Meier. I think like the asset cost is probably far less. Like not egregiously, but like think
Yeah.
about what the Canucks are going to want for Bo Horvat,
Oh, it's going to be, yeah. And they're not letting you talk extension either. So,
which is don't get me started on that situation because I'm going to get myself in trouble. Yeah. I think Ryan O'Reilly's actually if he can come back and play off of his broken foot, I think that's the guy. And he's proven that like he's a nasty bit of business in the playoffs. And
yeah,
the
that's
Leafs
the
don't need
reason
to
why
like
I
this
like
other
them.
thing is like the Leafs do not need to get tougher. Anybody who says that, please kick rocks. Like kick
Yeah.
rocks.
Listen, and again, go back to Trotz talking about the Leafs players getting their nose dirty and doing all of those things that everyone says they don't do, funnily enough, but they do. And
Oh,
I think
weird.
once Austin Matthews learns to use his size just a little bit more, like when he sat down Shea Weber 2 seasons ago and he looked down at him like that was me. I did like almost like, oh shit, I didn't know that I did that.
Yeah.
But if he can have that feeling and that confidence, I take it as Matthews coming into his like Ryan Getzlav era, where
Yeah, and
Getzlav
I don't
finally
think that
learned to use his size and fight and just be a Gronk, basically.
yeah, like I don't want Austin Matthews fighting at all.
No.
But
I
I
don't think
think
there is room for it really much anymore anyway.
I think also injecting another leader into that locker room, you can never have I've learned this kind of being in the game. You can never have too much leadership. Like Mark Giordano being there is a huge plus. Scott Mayfield is another guy that's a super underrated leader. Ryan O'Reilly, there's not really a debate about that one. But to me, the more you have, the better off you are. If you look at Tampa Bay, Stamkos is a leader, Hedman's a leader, but so is Braden Points. I mean, like, so is Anthony Cirelli. So is so many of their like bottom end guys. Like when Andre Palat was there, like he was a leader. Eric Chernak, like they just have this plethora of guys who can really step up in the big moments. And I think Ryan O'Reilly and Bo Horvat are two guys that one proven leadership qualities, but also like in crunch time, they kind of know how to settle it down. And I mean, last year, like with the Canucks, like Bo was the guy we turned to when like another unnamed player was having temper tantrums. So like it's one of those things, right? Where I think that you have like Marner and Matthews are still young. Like they haven't won anything.
Nope.
Right? And they haven't really even had any level of success. Like Bo Horvat has had more playoff success than Matthews and Marner have. Albeit in the bubble, but like still that
still
counts.
Still,
and so for
still
me, like you can never have too much of that. Right? That's why I think the Mark Giordano situation is a good one. That's why I think Scott Mayfield, like, been to conference finals with the Islanders. Like, that's very, very valuable. I also would love if the Leafs acquired Luke Shen. I still have my Luke Shen jersey. He has now signed that, which is kind of wild.
That's awesome.
But it's one of those things where I think that's a super underrated thing is you need guys that can perform in the playoffs, whether we want to admit it or not. The Leafs' top guys outside of William Nylander have not been great in the playoffs. And maybe you
No,
just need that catalyst that can kind of say, like, okay, you know what? Like, it's okay to play this way. Like, you can do this. And so, I'm pretty down for an O'Reilly Mayfield kind of combo.
that would be amazing.
I
Those
think
would
it's
be the two
easy enough.
players I think that might propel this lineup to the next way. I want to wrap it up here with you with this question about the Toronto Maple Leafs. So you said that it would be hard pressed to get past the first round, given what Boston's been doing and what Tampa's doing. But if they do make those acquisitions of Ryan O'Reilly and Mayfield, do you see that being able to propel the Leafs maybe past the Tampa Bay Lightning, who, by the way, held their own last year and could have closed the series out twice, just didn't end up doing it?
As long as an unnamed Toronto Maple Leaf decides that they're going to take maybe a bit of a run at Andre Vasilevsky, sure. Like, I honestly, genuinely, he's a problem. We have this theory, like a lot of NHL teams have this theory. There are 5 goaltenders in the league that are true difference makers, and the rest are just voodoo nonsense.
I
Guess
can
who
see
has
that
one of those 5 goaltenders?
in Tampa.
Yeah, but Boston doesn't. Like, Linus Ullmark could literally implode in the playoffs. Nobody knows. But you know
Yeah,
who's probably not going to implode in the playoffs? Andre Vasilevsky. Right?
unless you get under his skin, get in his kitchen like we did a little bit last year, where he started getting a little frustrated, started taking swings at guys.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like, do you have the guys? Like, Michael Bunting is absolutely willing to do that. But, like, do you have the guys that are willing to disrupt the apple cart, let's say? And I think if they
Kyle
can get
Clifford,
Ryan,
come on down for one game.
yeah, if you can get Ryan O'Reilly, like we
Oh,
said,
I
like,
think he would. Ooh, yes.
yeah, he would be an issue. Bo Horvat's had playoff success because he doesn't change his game. He just like continues. He is a playoff kind of guy.
Yeah.
And so yes, I think if they make those acquisitions, there is a better chance because I also think that Ryan O'Reilly is really going to piss off one Nikita Kucherov. And when Nikita Kucherov is angry, he doesn't play as well.
Well, and he also takes a lot of dumb, selfish penalties.
Exactly. I mean, like,
cross checks, slashing. So
we frustrated when we played Tampa in New Jersey the year I was there. Somebody frustrated him, and he literally ended Sammy Vatanen's career because he just elbowed him in the head like a psychopath. And like that somehow went unpunished. I've never seen Ray Shiro as mad as that in that moment. Like that was such a dirty hit. And that was really the first time where I was like, this guy's a really dirty hockey player.
I made
And
that
then it's just, like,
comment last
continued.
week about Kucherov being dirty, and so many Tampa fans were like, "You don't know what you're talking about. He's not
Oh,
dirty. He just defends himself." I'm like, "No, go back and watch. He's pretty damn dirty."
The
you can
wires
be
get crossed
dirty
with
and
him.
defend yourself. Brad Marchand does it all the time.
Yep.
That's kind of how that works. So did Rafi Torres. Like, yes, you're gonna have to defend yourself. That's how that works.
Yeah.
But I do think that if they can get, you can't like if Toronto just like makes like fringe moves, then I will say it like they're probably screwed against Tampa. They probably are.
All
But
right,
if
so the
they
new
actually
banner is no fringe moves.
go out and make a splash,
I think
then
they
I
have to this year,
think that
though.
they could be a serious issue for Tampa because like Nick Paul centers the third line for Tampa. Is anyone going to sit here and tell me that Nick Paul's better than Ryan O'Reilly? Like,
No,
not.
not by a long shot. And also,
And,
Ryan O'Reilly will match him physically as well.
yeah, and like, does Tampa have difference makers on the back end? Yeah, they have Chernak and Hedman and Sergachev. Like, those are 3 really good defensemen. But like after that, there is a significant drop off, like a big one. Whereas
That's
like
what you need to
Toronto doesn't
expose.
have a Victor Hedman,
Nope.
right? But
No,
Scott Mayfield
no.
could very easily be Eric Chernak or Mikhail Sergachev. I think Morgan Riley is a better defenseman than Mikhail Sergachev is. And so for me, like I think Toronto's more well-rounded on the back end, and they also play better defensively. But the other issue that you have with Tampa is John Cooper is one of the best coaches in the league.
Yeah,
He just
knows how to
is.
get things going.
Right? There's a reason that like one of the only coaches to beat him over the past like few-ish seasons had Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar. Like,
But by the way, studied the first round matchup and the clinic that Toronto did put on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Mr. Bednar did. He studied
Yep.
every bit of that and used that for ammo against them. So obviously, Toronto has a bit of a blueprint of what to do. It's just having the proper players to execute said blueprint, like
And
Colorado did.
who was the difference maker in Colorado versus Tampa? Who was the one difference maker?
Cale McCarr, Nathan McKinnon. You go down a little list.
So Toronto has a comp for Nathan McKinnon, right? It's Austin Matthews.
Yep, cheat codes.
But they do not have a comp for Cale McCarr.
No, they have a
And
very,
that's
very light version in Morgan Riley.
Extremely light.
Yes.
But that's one of those things. I think it's a coin flip series. I really, really do.
Yep.
Whereas I think Toronto can really kind of put some tip on the scales if they make a legitimate acquisition at the deadline.
Well,
and I think if they don't, that is a problem. It really is, because you can't, in the same thing to a lesser degree with Edmonton and this situation with Jacob Chikrin. Like, I'm sorry, but Xavier Bourgault is not helping Connor McDavid win a Stanley Cup this year. But you know who might? Jacob freaking Chikrin. In the same way that, like, if somebody came to me and said, the Leafs can acquire Jacob Chikrin, but it would require them giving up Timothy Liljegren and Matthew Nyes, I'd be like, yes, go. Like, what? You're doing that every day of the week. And Jacob Chikrin makes similar to Jake McCabe. You going to sit here and tell me that Jacob Chikrin is worse than Jake McCabe?
Like, no, the only thing everybody has a little bit of hesitancy with Chikrin is the injuries.
I have that hesitancy with Jake McCabe.
True enough. Well,
right?
I've already jumped myself out of the Jake McCabe sweepstakes by talking about his salary, so I'm good with that one. But yeah,
that's an acquisition that I would look at too, because like Jacob Chikrin, I would have him running my top PP at that point too. I would be okay if that was the big splash Toronto made. I would be okay with that because Jacob Chikrin is more of a longer term piece, whereas like the other three guys we kind of talked about are not really here.
Unless you get Ryan O'Reilly to take a sweetheart deal, like Mark Giordano did, stick around and hang out.
I don't think that's happening.
Not that low, but I mean, like kind of a.
But like 2.5 or 3, maybe.
In that range, hey, yeah, just replace him with Kerfoot. You know, there you go. Give him.
I don't know, Pete. What do you want?
I'd love to see Ryan O'Reilly on that on the second line there, replacing Calle Yarncrook. That would be my favorite move right there.
All right. I think we're all kind of on the O'Reilly train.
I've been on that O'Reilly train for a long, long time.
Is 90 available right now? It is, I think, right?
I don't think anybody's 90 within the organization.
Yeah, it's definitely not retired. So you're
no. I think Ty Voigt has it in the OHL. I think he wore it when he came up.
Well, that was it. Ty Voigt might get included in a Ryan O'Reilly deal, so like,
yeah, he might be out the door for sure.
He's got some value around the league. I could see the Leafs using him as a significant trade chip.
Yeah, no, there's a few guys that people really, I guess, don't pay attention to that the Leafs have, because everyone also says the Leafs have no assets to move, but I firmly believe they have plenty of assets to move.
I would move Nyes before I move Topi Niemela. I'll say that.
I'm very high on Topi Niemela.
Yeah. It is far easier to draft a forward than it is to draft a defenseman. And I would move Matthew Nyes before I moved this year's first round pick.
Interesting.
Well, the deep draft. It is a
first round is disgusting. Like, I don't even. You are getting, if the Leafs draft at like 25, you are getting a player that's roughly comparable to a team who drafted 8 last year. Like, that's how good this draft is.
And that's the reason why Kyle Dubas doesn't want to give up that pick.
Yeah.
So. It makes a lot of sense. But one pick that will be kind of valuable as well is Ottawa's third that we have this year, the Toronto Maple Leafs do. Yep. Because obviously it'll be high in the third round. And if you got a good drafting department, I love the LA Kings or other teams that stockpile prospects, that might be something to dangle out there as well.
Yeah, I could see that being a trade chip for sure. And I mean, Ottawa's gonna, I would have to think, move out some bodies now. With Josh Norris being gone, like they're kind of done. I think that like Tarasenko's gonna get moved out in St. Louis. They're kind of done. So the teams that are the Leafs are going to try and be trading with, they're gonna want that pick. So I think I agree with you. I would rather a pick this year than like some B-level prospect, honestly.
Well, like you said, the draft is stacked. So we're looking forward to the trade deadline, looking forward to everything. Hopefully maybe we can get you back on post-trade deadline, see what the Leafs actually did, get your thoughts, and bring you back in. But I appreciate you giving us the time, Rachel. It's amazing to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for
Great.
having me on, guys. What is the
Yeah.
score in the Leaf game, Pete?
It's 2-1 Rangers right
2-1
now. But
Rangers.
Rachel, let us know where we can find you and let us know what your podcast name is.
Yeah, so you can find me at Rachel Doerrie on Twitter. Probably should have just put that in my name, but it's the same handle there. Just put an at in front of it. You can find me on TikTok at Puckbucks. The Staff and Graph podcast, the Hockey News Action Show. So it's like a betting show.
There you go.
Where I'm doing that. Yeah, I've now just like, instead of using my models for like proper analysis, I'm using it for betting. Fun.
Nothing wrong with that.
Ooh,
Hey man, I'm not on an
checking
NHL
out.
team's payroll. I'm allowed to do that.
That's it
So
right
yeah,
there.
that's where you can find me. Yeah, it's kind of fun. I'm pretty brand new to TikTok, so
You're
it's
a good
been-
follow on TikTok, Rachel. I'll say that. You're gonna
Nice.
grow on that.
Oh yeah, no, you're gonna explode, absolutely blow up. So get ready for it. And people are gonna watch the videos and obviously get the knowledge that they want to. So again, I really appreciate you swinging by and sitting here with us and talking about the Leafs and bringing our hopes up and then shattering them like with Muzzin. But it is what it is. We're Leaf fans. We're used to all those things.
You have never once had your hope shattered as a Leafs fan. It's never happened.
No,
You know what?
once.
People would say that about me because I'm Mr. Positive. After they go out in the playoffs, I'm like already looking to next year, excited again. It's okay. What are they going to do in the summer? Yeah. I don't really grieve for long when the season ends. I like it because it's something to spend your time with and do. It's not life or death.
No, not at all. But yeah, you can find me there. I usually don't reply on Twitter because I'm sure these two men have looked at my replies and can figure out why I don't reply on Twitter. People are kind of nuts.
It can be gross.
Yeah. Twitter
Yeah.
is a very, very gross place. You
So
post
can
and leave
TikTok, so
alone
just
most times.
be on the lookout for TikTok to be a little toxic.
Oh, I've already seen it. Like, it's kind of wild, but I'm way more likely to respond on TikTok as long as you're not a complete lunatic. Because, like, I actually kind of go through those comments. Whereas, like, Twitter, you just shut it out. Like, I'm not interested in any of that right now. So that's
I
kind of...
find Twitter, it's like one personal comment, and then if you respond to it, it's like a pack. Their pack shows up, and then you're just slammed by their entire group. So it's like, nah, it's not worth it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And for sure, like, after trade deadline, we'll break down what happened.
We'll break down if our hearts are broken, if they just did fringe nibbling or not.
Watch, we're gonna like hang up this podcast like 3 days from now and be like, the Leafs have traded for like Ryan O'Reilly, and be like, well,
We will dance. We will definitely dance. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for tuning in with us with Rachel Doerrie. Of course, that's Pete the Heat. I'm James. This is Offside Hockey Talk, where the Leafs and hockey come to talk.